Good evening. My name is Shannon Brun, and welcome to Unity of Chattanooga's Midweek Faith Lift. I'm here with Reverend Holden, and I'm here with Reverend Gittens, and we are live on the Unity campus of the Unity campus.
Unity Village, yeah.
That's it, of Unity Village.
Of Unity Village. We've been here for the last, 2 days? And we've been at the Celebrating Our Soul celebration.
It's a
help me out,
conference.
guys.
Conference?
Yeah, help me out. Conference. And I've been having a good time. I don't know about you guys.
Oh man, having a ball.
Yeah. And you're actually on the planning committee for this.
Yes, I am. Well, a few committees, but
Yeah. But today, I wanted to bring these guys together today to talk a little bit about forgiveness. And I want to let Reverend Gittens start off by telling us a little bit about, forgiveness and what that means to him and how we can apply that in our lives on a regular basis.
Well, great. Thanks for asking. And forgiveness, first and foremost, I want to say that it's a long word and it seems to have a negative connotation among a lot of people. And forgiveness, basically, I'm going to say that let's get one of the ways that we hear that word most of the time, and that's biblically. We hear it in the Bible. Jesus with the disciples, and hey, Master, how often should we forgive? And Jesus replied, 70 times 7. Of course, I'm paraphrasing, but 70 times 7. And from what I understand, the disciples weren't too pleased with that. It seemed like, what? Really? And so the way that we use it to get the benefit from it, and I like to do talks around forgiveness, is called freedom from forgiveness. The whole purpose of forgiveness is freedom. Now the question is, who's the freedom for?
Wow.
Is it freedom for the people who are so-called needing forgiveness? Yeah, in a way, we're freeing them from somebody else trying to hold something onto them. But forgiveness is really for the person who is doing the forgiving, because they're the ones that's holding on to something, like not forgetting, not forgiving, and most certainly another part of what we're going to talk about is not surrendering. And so then we're going to have to talk about what forgiveness is, and perhaps we'll have Reverend Holden mention that. What do you think?
And I think also the therapeutic value of what happens when I think that's what you guys, you mentioned a little bit, the therapeutic value of what happens when you do forgive.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But give us your take on it.
So for me, forgiveness, what is forgiveness? For me, forgiveness is the key to freedom, as Reverend Gittens talked about. And I also, jokingly say that forgiveness is the other F word. Right, because people don't want to speak about it.
Right.
They don't want to talk about forgiveness. And as Reverend Gittens was talking about, forgiveness can have a negative connotation, and the reason why is because some people might think that if I forgive that person, that means that I let them off the hook. Now, here's the thing for me is that forgiveness doesn't mean that what you've done or what that person done or said is okay. Forgiveness means that I accept what's going on. It merely says, okay, I acknowledge that was done. Now, the other step, right, going to that freedom is forgiveness is really, for me, forgiveness is not about that person. Forgiveness is all about me. Forgiveness frees me up, right? Because if I'm not willing to forgive, here's, trip this. If I'm not willing to forgive, I'm hanging on to something that happened 5 days ago, 5 years ago, 25 years ago, and that person has gone on to live their lives. And I'm still stuck in that because I have not been willing to forgive or have not been willing to set myself free through forgiveness.
Is there like a biological negative connotation?
Great question.
On not forgiving? Like, is there
Absolutely.
anything that you want to
Absolutely. And that's one of the main things we need to address, because someone who is not willing to forgive and is more willing to hold on to the past, as you heard, it could be 5 seconds ago, hey, you stepped on my toe. And okay, that was done, but the longer we hold on to it, the more it begins to affect us. And how does it affect us? Because what we hold in our thoughts eventually is going to affect us on a physical level, and it's going to manifest. It's been said, and I'll say it in the most clean way as I can. Usually, because if you're holding on to to forgiveness, it creates a resentment, and resentments are like spitting into the wind. It's just going to come right back on you. It's not even going to touch the object that you're trying to affect. It's just going to come right back. And so therefore, we're the ones that are being affected by our very own thoughts and actions. And so therefore, we're a prisoner of our own thoughts. We're a prisoner of our own beliefs, a prisoner of our own, maybe it turns into hate, maybe it turns into rage. But that resentment, it doesn't stay stable. It builds and builds, and it begins to affect us in more ways than one. It's been said that cancer.
I was going to ask you about that. Any medical, conditions associated with not letting go of?
Absolutely. Cancer has been linked to creating a cancerous condition in the body. And one of the healing techniques to heal cancer on a metaphysical level or even on a physical level is laughter.
Yes.
Is not to be upset, not to hate. Is allow love to flourish in your mind and in your body and body of affairs. And so therefore, you're absolutely right. Thank you for asking that.
Yeah, I know we have some practitioners here that's been here over the weekend, and they've kind of they have these practices that they do. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with those practices. Wait, before we get into that, where are you guys from? We didn't do that. We didn't talk about who you are, where you're from, your credentials. I mean, some people just need to know what your credentials are. You know what I mean? So maybe we need to do that before we go into this whole.
We forgive you.
Okay. Thank you so much. I don't want you to get canceled.
Oh, gosh. Reverend Eugene Holden. I am currently living in Hanover, Pennsylvania. I am originally from Los Angeles, California. I have spent 10 years as a Science of Mind practitioner. Well, I spent 10 years at home office for Centers for Spiritual Living. I have been a licensed practitioner through the Centers for Spiritual Living for 17 years. And again, I'm now living in Hanover, Pennsylvania. And my ministry is mostly online. I teach, I give classes, I see clients, I facilitate workshops and retreats.
Wow, that's a lot. Great, thank you.
Hi. I'm Reverend Rodney Gittens. I'm hail from Brooklyn, New York, and the name of my spiritual center is One Love Center for Spiritual Living. We are affiliated with Centers for Spiritual Living, which was formerly called Religious Science, and we practice the science of mind and spirit teaching and practices. I've been a minister for I've been doing this work for many years. I've been in New Thought teaching, which this is, for almost 30 years. And I whenever opportunity, I teach classes, do workshops, and most certainly forgiveness is one of my favorite subjects.
Yes.
And I speak at unity churches and religious science churches and independent churches whenever they come for me, and I say yes. So thank you for asking, and thank you for being here.
You guys are welcome. So I mentioned earlier that they have a few practitioners here that are actually doing some type of spiritual work around letting go of, releasing blockages.
Right.
So does that work have anything to do with letting go of?
Oh, absolutely. And the reason why I say absolutely is because what we want to realize and remember is that we are all one. Everything is one. I am also a practitioner of Tai Chi Chuan. And what Tai Chi has taught me is that the universe, everything, is one, right? So when we're talking about healing practitioners, be it Reiki, be it massage, be it whatever the modality is, it is working with the energy of the one, just in different ways. Like a piano will play a chord a different way than the guitar would, but it's still music, right? And so when we're looking at different modalities of healing, so all of that works together. And coming back to that beautiful thing called forgiveness. When we add those modalities to one's intention to forgive, when we add those modalities to it, then that freedom is exponentially quickened. But here's the thing about we have to be willing to forgive.
That's a very interesting point. Forgiveness is a common theme in all religions and in so many other avenues of self-help, and including recovery. It could be recovery from addiction, whether it's gambling, sex, or alcohol or other drugs, or whatever it is. Forgiveness is a key to moving forward.
Yes.
For freedom.
Yes.
We don't get freedom instantly because there's a saying. It says, it took 20 miles to walk into the forest. It's going to take that 20 miles to walk out.
Right.
So we have to go through a process to be able to release in order to fully surrender. Yeah, and that's the thing. There's a difference between saying, I'm sorry,
Oh man, come on.
and I forgive. Big difference. I'm sorry. First of all, the word sorry, you have to look at where does that word come from? It comes from sorrow. If you're sorrowful, well, that's a feeling of like, well, I don't like that happened. I'm feeling about what happened, but it doesn't mean it's not going to happen again. Forgiveness denotes, I don't like what happened. I apologize. And in the forgiveness, it won't happen again. And so when we get biblical about it, how many times, how long do we forgive? 70 times 7. That's a process. It's a process that's going to allow for freedom and then surrender. Now, I don't know, but if you're doing forgiveness, I don't know if somebody's actually going to stand there and mark how many times they've forgiven that situation. But it leads to another point about forgiveness and surrender. And I think when we were discussing it a little bit earlier, Reverend Holden touched on it. Is about who is the forgiveness really for? And would you?
Yeah, sure will. So again, forgiveness, is the key to freedom. And what I like to say is that forgiveness has nothing to do with that other person. Forgiveness, because I'm going to be selfish with the capital S, right? Forgiveness is not for that person. Forgiveness is all about me, right? It frees me up, right? Because if I am unwilling to forgive, and going back to the biological effects of non-forgiveness, as Reverend Gittens had mentioned, it does affect the body. It affects the cells, right? Because we are created in such a beautiful way that the body remembers everything, and it goes into the cells, right? And so
You got all these knots. You got all these knots.
all
in
these
your
knots,
all over.
right?
Yeah.
Right. And so, so we want to become free. And also on that 70 times 7, that's also, yes, we can, I forgive. But it's also a symbolic way of saying, it's just as Reverend Gittens said, that it is a process. And how do you know that you forgive?
Let's talk about that process, because it's easier said than done.
Oh my goodness.
I've had some situations where, and I probably have one situation that I'm still holding on to some extent.
Yeah.
And so, are there steps to forgiveness?
I think so.
Yeah.
Right?
I would agree.
And I think for me, the first step is being willing to forgive. And here's
At least being willing. You don't have to do it yet.
right. Just be willing to be willing.
Yeah. Just be willing.
Be willing to forgive, right?
But how do you become willing?
See, you want to go.
Well,
I think I know the answer to
if
that
you think
one,
about your own life, and as you're listening to this, think about areas that you just didn't want to let go of. And it started creating an experience in your mind, your thoughts. You can't get to sleep because you're thinking about what happened, no matter how long ago it was. I share with you very quickly. As a child, I got scared by my dad. He came home on a really rough day at work, and it was pouring rain. He was soaking wet, and I used as a toddler. I used to just come home and grab him on the leg. Hi, Daddy's home. And one day he was just so upset from his day that he just like roared at me when he came in, and was like, "Oh, leave me alone," and it scared me. And that one action affected my life pretty much up until now. I mean, so for many years, I had a fear. I was harboring a resentment for him scaring me, somebody that I loved and worshiped, and all of a sudden, he rejected me. I had no idea what his day was like. I had no idea what he was going through until, fast forward about 30, 40 years later, the story came out. It came out where family talking. Oh, you remember what happened to Rodney? Oh yeah, he got scared and ran away, and it interrupted the relationship I was having with my dad. And so, just to make it really short and sweet, once I found out about that, then I became willing because I understood. I became willing.
I think that's the key.
When I understood that it wasn't about me and the hurt that I experienced. I didn't know what he had gone through. And so I became willing to forgive him. And I did. But guess what? That wasn't enough. Because I didn't do a process of forgiveness. It took me another few years to institute a process to further my understanding, not so much of what he went through, because I knew what he went through. And he didn't feel, he had anything to be forgiven about.
Right.
Usually they don't know what the hell's going on. They don't know that you got a problem with it.
Right.
You know?
And so the main teaching that happens in, whether it's A Course in Miracles or religious science or unity or whatever, is first of all, as Reverend Holden said, there's only one. There's only one life. This is what Jesus was teaching. There's, when he said, my Father and I are one. This is the lesson that is saying, this is who we are. And as one, as the expression of God, in, through, and as me, I can't really be hurt. So therefore, what is there to forgive? My ego took a beating.
See?
How dare they do that to me? How dare he do that to me? And so what then is there to forgive once I have the understanding that he was just doing the best he could do on a really rotten day? And so once I got that understanding, I had to look within. And then what? Forgive myself. I forgive me.
Yes.
And the ego does not want to play that game. The ego is like, oh no, we got to hold on to that. Right. Come on, I'm working with some power here, some anger.
Right.
I have something to go against.
Right.
And this is where the surrender comes in.
Yes. Yes.
That I heard you mention.
Yes. Yeah. And for, surrender. I love these topics: surrender, forgiveness, surrender, and on both. And it's interesting. What I just got is that these are actually tools for us to remember who we are. These are tools to set ourselves free, to remember that we are the divine emanation of, call it whatever you want, right? Call it God, call it Allah, call it, right? And call it it. And surrender. For me, I love surrender. For me, surrender has two sides, right? And the first side is to surrender all of the things that no longer serve you. Surrender the thoughts of doubt. Surrender the thoughts of pisosity. Surrender the thoughts of fear. Surrender the thoughts of lack and limitation. That's the one side of surrender. The other side of surrender is surrender to your gifts. Surrender to your love. Surrender to your joy. Surrender to your creativity, and then allow that to flow through. And in order for that to flow through, we need to forgive so that we may be free, so that we can be the instruments of the divine to flow through.
I mean, it's like, what else is, when you let all of that stuff go, well, you floating on water.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't let it all go, but I can just imagine, because for me, holding on to that stuff provides, and I'm sure for other people, I'm a normal person. I have my spiritual moments.
Right.
But holding on to that stuff helps me it gives me the false sense of being anchored. If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
I'm not anchored, but it gives me a false sense.
I love that, the false sense. Yeah.
So, and I think that's the reason why a lot of people, hold on to that stuff, because if we let it go, then
who will I be?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
If I let
at least
this go,
I know who I
am.
am.
Right.
But if I let that stuff go,
Moving into the unknown, meaning, and this is the important part. When I mentioned ego before, see, the ego works with what the brain knows. This is my experience. This is my past. I know this. I experienced this. This is real for me.
Right.
All right. But to step into the unknown is the invisible.
Right.
And that's the place where love is. That's the place
Yeah.
where faith is. That's the place where trust is. That's the place where God is.
Right.
And so the ego says, well, wait a minute. What about me? I've been with you all this time.
Your life.
And look what we've done. We don't let that hurt happen again.
Right.
But it does.
But it does.
And it continues to happen. It feels fresh every time you think about it.
Right.
Not just the thought, but the feeling.
But at least people say, at least I know. At least I know what it is.
Right.
But
That's right.
But it's something on the other side that's much greater.
Right.
Much better.
Right.
And that the willingness to
Right.
step out. And like, okay, so we're speaking of step, if you had the 12 steps in the self-help group in 12 steps of recovery, the first step, first of all, you have to realize I need to be willing
Right.
to change because I don't like the pain that all of a sudden I'm discovering is having.
Yeah.
I can't keep blaming somebody else, and I'm the one that's feeling it. Like Reverend Holden said, you know, that person didn't even think about it when it happened, and years later they're still not thinking about it.
I think once you realize the benefits, once you realize the benefits of letting stuff go,
Right.
and you believe it, you begin to say, you know what, the willingness begins to come. But if there's no benefit to it, you know, because to some extent, I think the ego is we're very selfish. The ego's very selfish. So,
Yeah.
you know, but if I can get something out of it,
Right.
you know, then
Right.
you know what, I'll consider letting this stuff go.
Yeah.
But the belief has to change. And there's a saying that says, you know, when the pain outweighs the pleasure, you'll do something about it. You know, when all of a sudden there is no compensation for holding on to that resentment, to that pain, to that hurt, to that memory, that thought. And especially if, and that's happened to me, I don't know about anybody else, but you walk up to somebody you haven't seen in a while, you know, I remember what you did to me that time. And then what are you talking about? You know, that didn't happen, or I'm sorry you felt that way, and they walk away and they're done. And you're like, what? That's it? you know? And yeah, that's when we begin to like realize, well, all that time I was holding on to all of that, and it meant nothing to them.
Right.
I can't even blame them.
Right.
Now what do I do with it?
Right.
And it's like that hot potato. I don't want it.
Drop it like it's hot, right?
Drop it like it's
right.
hot.
So we forgive. What is it like on the other side?
Well, just real well. Okay, good. Because that's going to lead me into this. So, because one of the and Reverend Gittens hit on it, and I want to make sure that we make this clear though, because it's very important that we learn and be willing to forgive yourself. I've worked with many clients throughout the years who will say, when we're talking about forgiveness, that it's easier for me to forgive that other person than it is to forgive myself. So my question to that person is, if you haven't forgiven yourself, how fully have you forgiven them? Because if I'm still hanging on to some anger about me, then how can I really forgive that person? Now, on the other side of forgiveness, and this is where we began, right? On the other side of forgiveness, man, freedom. Freedom. Freedom for what? Freedom to do what? Freedom to be what? Freedom to be yourself. Freedom to allow, remember I was saying to surrender to your creativity, surrender to your joy, so you're free now to not only receive that, but you're free to be that joy, to be that peace, to be that love. Freedom to be loved, oh my goodness, and to be loved, right?
Wow.
Yeah. Self-forgiveness is self-love.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, you know what, guys? We've been going for about like 20 minutes.
Okay.
And I want to thank you guys for joining me today.
Oh, absolutely, Shannon.
Yeah. And I want to remind our viewers that if you have any questions that you for Reverend Holden or Reverend Gittens, just send us an email.
Yeah, call Shannon.
Yeah. You can send me an email at UnityChattanooga what is it? contact@unitychattanooga.org, and we'll get those questions answered.
Again, that address is?
Messing with me, contact@unitychattanooga.org. Okay. But I want to thank you guys for joining us. And again, we're live here at the Unity Village Center in
Lee Summit, Missouri.
And I'm so grateful to be here.
Yeah.
And I want to thank you guys for joining me again.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and thank you all for your listening. Thank you for forgiving.
Yeah.